What's going on, everyone? Bryant here. Today is Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. We're just going to be going over a quick trade recap I took today in TWLO. They reported earnings after hours yesterday, and I took it short early in the morning. Now, if you've been following some of my recent videos, you guys will know how I showed you guys some great strategies, and they came into play today, but those were for long setups. I want to show you guys how you can use similar strategies to also take shorts. Now, before we jump over to TWLO intraday, let's just take a quick look at the broader markets. We're still dealing with some election and stimulus blues, if you will. The market is still very much so spooked. The Nasdaq has been continuing to sell off. It looks like we finally are starting to catch a bid along the 50-day SMA here on the daily time frame for the Nasdaq. So we are dealing with a very difficult market to trade, especially if you are a bull. And in the ES, we have the selling continuing. Elections is exactly 1 week from today, so it can be considered a risk off period. So after looking at that, let's just jump back into TWLO and let's go intraday. If you've seen my previous video, you guys will know I mentioned the 2-day anchored VWAP. The anchored VWAP is something I went over in a little bit detail in the previous video. It was created by Brian Shannon, but I created a strategy based around the anchored VWAP, anchoring it always to the previous day's open. If you don't have Thinkorswim, I'm going to show you guys how you can get this information using another charting software such as TradingView or even TrendSpider. They're both excellent. This is just something I hacked together in Thinkorswim. I'll put the link down in the description below so how you guys can have the anchored VWAP. Now let's turn on our pre-market data here and we'll check what happened after hours yesterday. As we can see right here, they reported, and initially the market liked the reaction. I think they actually had a revenue beat or something like that, but then you guys can see that the sell-off came after. I think that was because they issued forward guidance that the market was not happy with. Now, I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm not a fundamental trader. I do not look too much into what a company reports. I read the charts and I look to see how the market reacts, and then I take the trade the following day based on the information that is presented to me. Now let's turn the pre-market data off again, and let's talk about first and foremost why I had the trade idea to go short, aside from the fact that we started selling off after the earnings report came out yesterday. Let's jump into our hourly time frame on TWLO, and actually let's go to the 30-minute time frame because we're going to talk a little bit about supply and demand. If you guys saw one of my earlier videos, it was on trading Tesla the day after earnings. I talked about supply and demand. Right now we're looking at TWLO on the 30-minute time frame, and I noticed we had a supply zone up here. This was yesterday. I had it on watch for a short the moment we entered this zone. So let's just change this color to red, which you know is something I like to do just to make sure that my charts look aesthetically pleasing. And sometimes when you're looking at multiple stocks, you do want to just have these color coordinated. So that way when the market is open, you're not busy trying to figure out what does that rectangle on your chart mean. This, I know, to me means it is a supply zone. So that was yesterday. Now coming into today, the market consolidated a little bit towards the end of the day, and I noticed this 30-minute zone right here. I read this as it being potential supply coming into today. Also, you guys just saw from the pre-market data was turned on before. We know what happened after hours. We kind of bounced around this zone, and eventually sellers ended up winning, and that's what drove price down. So this can be interpreted as also supply. Any orders that were filled yesterday before the market closed, they might look to get out the following day because they will take it as a break even. And as we know, previous support becomes future resistance and so forth. So buyers the previous day that were then in the red, when price comes back up to this zone, they're highly likely to sell to take it for a break even instead of hoping, for it to go higher. So that's the thinking one. It started from the previous day. Again, knowing that earnings was coming up and seeing the sentiment going into the earnings was relatively bearish. Now, TWLO has been having an excellent year. If we look at it on the daily time frame, it has been, on a tear, especially since 2 earnings ago. We had this massive gap up on volume, and it has been trending up. So most people might not be coming into the day looking to short something like this, but again, earnings provide some excellent opportunities to trade them the day after, or even sometimes 2 days after, possibly even 3 days after earnings. You'll generally get a really good setup. Earnings provides a lot of volatility in the market, so pay attention to the earnings calendars for whatever stocks that you generally trade. You want to know when these are coming up. If we jump back to an intraday time frame, let's look at this on the hourly here, and we have this right here zone can be seen as a demand zone, but I'm not going to draw too much, but we're not going to focus on demand zones because again, I did go short, and scrolling in, we'll look at the 30-minute time frame here. I did have this area marked off also as potential demand. I will point this one out because I was using this as a potential profit target for the short. So we'll actually make this green for potential buyers. And so here are my zones in which I had set. Coming to a smaller time frame now, let's look at the going back to the smaller time frame now. You guys can see how this chart looks pretty easy to read. Now today's actually my birthday, so I wasn't at the desk during the opening drive play, but I generally don't even take open and drive setups. I like to wait till after 9:45. 10 o'clock is usually where I get my sweet spots because the market tends to put into some, because most stocks tend to put in some sort of a reversal around 10 a.m., sometimes even 10:30 a.m. So if a setup presents itself at 10, I feel even more comfortable taking the trade because it's given 30 minutes for all of the initial volatility to kind of simmer down. This gray line right here is what we have as VWAP. So I was using this as my PT, which would be my profit target on the trade. Now what I was watching was to see, now what I wanted to see is once we ran up to my 2-day anchored, I had this area already marked off as a potential supply zone. So once we entered this area, I had an alert notified, and that's how I knew to come and take a look at the trade. It wasn't much thinking involved. This dashed line right here is the previous day's close. So what we have now is two confluences. Well, actually three. We have my 2-day anchored VWAP. We have this supply zone as well as the previous day's close. Now, if we look for a little bit more confluence, I'm going to draw out my Fibonacci's, and as you guys know, it's just another tool in which I use. Here's the swing high from yesterday to today's opening swing low, and right here we had our 50% retracement on this bounce up. So that was multiple confluence in this area, and what you want to look for is multiple confluence, especially in a supply or demand zone, because it gives you an area to risk off of. So I waited. Once I saw this wick rejection coming in here, I took my trade right here. I went in with shares, not options this time. I'm not comfortable trading TWLO's options because, to be honest, I never have, and I knew I wanted to be in a trade pretty quickly. I didn't have time to pull up the options chain from the time my time I was notified of my alert, and all I knew at this point was I would be risking about $1 to get at least $4 out of the trade. VWAP would have given me about $4 and change. Now I actually ended up closing it once we bounced a little bit off of VWAP, and then I was essentially done. So this was the trade in which I took, but I'm also going to point out, if you guys know from a couple videos ago, I talked about the 9 EMA VWAP crossover. I want you guys to see how it works to the downside. This was the trade in which I took, but let's turn on the EMA, and I want to show you guys something pretty cool here. Okay, now that we have the 9 EMA on the chart, let me just point out one thing. This is also just after 10. So you see right here would be 10 a.m. This is when we first hit this point here. And then at 10:09 is actually where we got the rejection. So right in the sweet spot in which I generally like to take some trades. Here is our EMA VWAP cross, but actually let's just backtrack. Sorry about that. I want to point out a couple of the reasons for this trade. Paying attention to the broader markets again, let's take a look at the NASDAQ on the left and the SPY on the right. Here's yesterday's price action and today. Yesterday and today, we can see we had a harsh sell-off yesterday on the NASDAQ as well as the SPY. And then today the SPY wasn't really going anywhere. This orange line is the 50-day SMA on the daily. So we're kind of consolidating around this level or just underneath it. Again, the market is just bouncing around these levels because elections is next week, as well as the back and forth stalemate between the Democrats and Republicans over the stimulus deal. What we can see here is that the NASDAQ was relatively stronger than the SPY today. But if we zoom into the SPY, we'll see right here at 10:05. These are 3-minute time frames, by the way. Everything in which we've been looking at intraday has been a 3-minute time frame. We can see at 10:05, 10:06, we put in this double top and we were rejected. On top of that, if we just make the ADD larger, we can see right here the ADD had gapped down below 0, and then right at that sweet spot at 10:09, that's when we had actually hit 0, and we were And generally, whenever we see this type of action happening, we'll get some sort of rejection off of 0. If you guys can see, a couple days ago, we actually bounced off of 0. We bounced off of 0. So paying attention to the ADD is something that I do whenever I'm intraday trading. And that was extra confirmation for me that the market was putting in this double top, as well as the ADD hitting 0. We also had the VIX which rise significantly yesterday, again, because it was such a harsh sell-off day. So fear has been rising in the markets, but we also had the VIX was rising around that time. So I did like this. And remember, I was looking to take a trade to the short side. So I'm looking for signs in the market as well as the market internals to show that the market will potentially reverse. And as you guys can see here, the SPY ended up dropping pretty significantly from that level. Looking back at TWLO, there was one extra confirmation that made me feel even better about taking this quick trade, and that is the volume profile. In my earlier videos, whenever I'm trading the futures, I always mention the volume profile, but believe it or not, you can use volume profile intraday when you're trading stocks. So how does the volume profile help you in a situation like this? I tend to always look at the volume profile for a stock for the past 5 days, the past 6 trading days or 5 trading days, just to get an idea for where is the point of control for the week. Before I show you in Thinkorswim, let's switch over to TradingView, which is something that's platform independent, and it's also international. So some of you I know don't have access to Thinkorswim. Some of you on PCs, some of you on Macs. TradingView, you can have a free account with TradingView. I'll put a link in the description down below. I do have a paid account. I don't have the highest membership. It's just something that I do like to have on the side. Also for charting, for extra confirmation for things. I'm going to put on the volume profile on this chart right now. If I just come up to indicators, I click volume profile. I want it to be a fixed range. If I double click on it right there, it pops up right here for me. And then I'm going to say I want it from the previous 5 days and then to the market open today. That's the information in which I had presented to me. So as I can see, this was the point of control. This just means this is where the majority of, this just means this is the price in which the majority of shares have traded around for the past X amount of days. In this particular case, it's the previous 5 days. So as you guys can see, this was the point of control, and I already had this level marked off, knowing we were running right up into the point of control for the past 5 days. Now, the past 5 days is just something that I like to do. It doesn't really matter. You can, pull this back and see. Sometimes you can use, when something has broken down, you can anchor it to the point of control from the breakdown. As you guys can see, that's still the point of control here. It doesn't really make much sense for my trade to have the point of control anchored to back here, because we're not in this level. I'm not concerned with the price action that's been happening up here. I'm interested in what's been happening for the price action that's around the price in which I'm trading. So we can use even this level right here would be a better idea, because again, this is when we first had this first sell-off. We've bounced back up here. I want to know what price the majority of shares have traded around since price has been between 314 to 288, because that's the range in which I'm trading. And as you guys can see, that's the point of control right here. Now, I mentioned earlier about the Anchored VWAP. You guys have access to the Anchored VWAP in TradingView. That's this tool right here. Anchoring it to the previous day's high, or paying attention to where the sell-off originally started. Here's my Anchored VWAP. You guys can see that that's how it aligns right here also. So that's the multiple confluence in which I'm talking about using TradingView. If we go back to Thinkorswim, you guys can see here is my Anchored VWAP. That's this line right here. I'm just going to throw on my volume profile in Thinkorswim also. Just going to check on show study, press OK, and here we have it. So this is the previous 5 days. We're looking at a 5-day 3-minute chart. You guys can see my volume profile. I just customized the way it looks. I don't need to see too much on the chart. This is just to get an idea of where the volume nodes are. And then this line right here would be the point of control for the past 5 days. And you guys can see how that also aligns in this area. Do you guys see how you can build a trade idea around multiple confluences that allows you to sit back, be patient, wait. You have time to double check the markets. This is a whole 30 minutes after the market is open. You can look for multiple confirmations of things. I always have the point of control up on one of my charts, on one of my screens, for whenever I'm checking a stock in which I'm trading, because I like to know where that is. The Fibonacci is something I will draw out before I take a trade, just to get an idea of where we are in the retracement space. And then I always have a 2-day Anchored VWAP up, because it's just part of my trading style. But even with all of this hidden, if we just hide all of my studies, there we go. you guys can see we'll also take the Fibonacci off, and we're just looking at price action. We started off with just supply and demand zones. So you guys see how just understanding that this was the previous day's close, this was also the supply zone, being able to understand what happened with the with market sentiments following earnings. Here was an earnings, we initially pushed up right into supply and sold off. That means sellers were up here, they got rid of their shares. Everyone that was still holding from yesterday's close and now a little bit nervous because this was not an earnings beat that Wall Street was expecting. So after even having all those things off the chart and just looking at the candlesticks, looking at this wick rejection right into supply, not to mention what happened pre-market, you guys can see how this was a great place to take a trade. Now let's hide our pre-market data and let's put back on our studies, and I want to show you guys this right here. Here is the 9 EMA cross to the downside. So in my previous video it was a cross to the upside, well, previous couple videos, because I was talking about momentum to the upside. This right here, once this crosses down, you guys can see how once we push away from VWAP, because VWAP in itself, there are traders that are trading just off of VWAP. Here, price broke down, we tried to bounce back up, and then we were rejected. Now on the 3-minute time frame with the 9 EMA is something I like to look for all day trenders. This in itself becomes another place to take a nice short, and you can use the 9 EMA because we're taking it in the direction of the sentiment or the direction of the trend. If we zoom out, we'll see that TWLO has been trending down. Just draw this out right here. Just a very, rough trend line. It's not to be pretty accurate. It's just to get the point across that we are currently trending down. So you want to take the trade in the momentum of the trend. And once this crack, this is a momentum based strategy. We have this demand zone right here, so it can be considered a scalp, and you guys can see that some buyers came in once we came down here. But if I hide this demand zone, I want you guys to pay attention to something right here. The price action, this price action right here, you guys can see how we ended up consolidating here, but look, as we became overextended from this 9 EMA, we started consolidating in this zone for, this was a little over 30 minutes, I believe. So yeah, so 30, 35, 38 minutes, we ended up consolidating, giving time for the 9 EMA to catch up to price. And you guys see how we could not get a 3-minute close over this. So once this consolidation zone broke down, the 9 can be used to continue to ride the momentum, and you can use low of day, you can use different reasons for your profit target and so forth, because this could have ended up actually being a good trade to swing into tomorrow, because again, it is an earnings setup, the news is out. So we'll see how this plays out. To finish this video, let's just jump over to the daily time frame. I do want to point something out to you guys right here. If we come back to when TWLO started this nice run up and we look at this high here, I'm just going to draw this out pretty loosely. I'm just looking to connect as many points as possible right here. Again, it's a very rough, loose trend line. I just chose this here. I just chose this period because we can see from this gap up, that's when sentiment changed and we actually started really going on a tear. And this was earnings back in 2018, I believe. If we come to present time, we can see that we might retest this trend line here. If we look intraday, that's this line down here. So that in itself, I won't be surprised if TWLO hits that pre-market or after hours. Let's see actually where we're at. Oh, look at that. We actually just touched it. We'll see what happens into tomorrow. Again, it's not a trade I swung. I actually just took this scalp and then I was done trading for today. It was my only trade of the day and I wanted to share that with you guys. So combining everything which I showed you guys, being able to read price action, as well as being able to combine the 9 EMA VWAP crossover strategy, as well as the 2-day anchored VWAP, using supply and demand zones, as well as waiting for news to come out after earnings. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like the video, share it if you learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.